What's up everyone? Tiger Stacker here. And in this video, we're going to talk about constitutional silver, junk silver, 90% silver. A lot of you use these terms interchangeably. And that's kind of the standard. However, for me, I break it down further because I don't see silver in the same way that some of you see it when we talk about constitutional silver. The Constitution says no state will produce anything except gold and silver coin for the payment of debt. So, silver and gold is constitutional. So, a large part of these coins are constitutional. But I'll categorize it differently, and in this video I'm going to explain this to you. You may agree with me, you may not agree with me, but this might also help some of the new stackers that are coming on board. I do believe an SHTF is going to hit. I don't have the wisdom of Solomon to know when it's going to hit. And I'm not a priest, and I'm not a religious leader of any type. It's purely my opinion, and please do not take it as anything else but that. However, I believe that I'm right. So, without further ado, let's get on with this. Junk silver breakdown, my definition. Junk silver, coins, rounds that is not pure, 100%, not 999 or 9999 fine silver. Chart about 2 years ago, and it helped me understand. So I hope it will do the same for you. Constitutional silver, money that was used in our history. $90 Morgan and Peace dollars. The Morgans were minted between 1878 and 1921. The Peace dollars were minted between 1921 and 1935. The half dollars. By the way, there are older coins than what shows on here. When I did this chart, I did not know about seated liberties. I did not know about trade dollars. It's been a learning process, and I am thinking about another video to teach about all of that. But continuing on. The oldest ones we typically talk about are the Barter half dollars, minted between 1892 and 1895. The Walking Liberty, which is the basis of 1/2 of our American Silver Eagle. Such a beautiful design. I don't think people want to get rid of the design. They got rid of the older reverse, but I like the old style better. Anyway, getting back on with what I was talking about. The Benjamin Franklin. Beautiful coin. I have to admit that I think this was probably the best looking half-dollar that was ever made. It was minted between 1848 and 1963. The Walking Liberty, by the way, was minted between 1916 and 1947. The John F. Kennedy, 1964 only for 90%, is minted in 1964, as I mentioned. The quarters also start off with the Barbers, minted between 1892 and 1916, minted between 1892 and 1916. The Standing Liberty, minted between 1916 and 1930. Interesting thing about the Standing Liberty, for the first 1 to 2 years, 1916 to 1917, they made it with her exposing her right breast. The people did not like it. So partway through 1917 and further on, she was fully clothed, which I never quite understood because it was a work of art. And we accept things done from other cultures as works of art. I think they made a huge mistake with that, but that's my opinion. The other problem with the Standing Liberties is that they are easily worn down and slickened down, mainly I think because it did not have an appropriate rim. Many of the rims are raised as to protect what is in the body of the coin, because they didn't have plastic back then, at least not for coins. And the same thing with the reverse. So the highest level was the date, and that's frequently worn off. If you get a Standing Liberty with a date, some people consider that to be more valuable than ones that have had it worn off. The Washington quarter, minted between, oh, by the way, Standing Liberty is minted between 1916 and 1930. Forgive me for forgetting about the Liberty. It's not the Liberty coins are very important. I'll get to that in a second, and I don't mean to be ignoring it. The George Washington, minted between 1932 to 1964 and 90%. They're still making them after 1964 in clad. They look different now, but for a long time they looked exactly like the old silver. The dimes, again, starts off with the Barber, which was minted between 1892 to 1916. The Mercury, which is wrongfully named, it's actually the Winged Liberty, minted between 1916 and 1945. And later the Roosevelt, minted between 1946 to 1964 and 90%. And they're still minted with the Roosevelt, but haven't been made in silver since 1964. I want to point out a few things before we continue. Note in the halves, quarters, and dimes, they all had the same face of liberty, designed by a fellow named Barber, ergo the name Barber, quarters, half dollars, and dimes. In 1910, a group of very wealthy businessmen and bankers snuck away to a place called Jekyll Island. And in that process, they came up with the plan for the Federal Reserve. In 1913, under Woodrow Wilson, who was not a very good president. In my opinion, he was a socialist who wanted to push socialistic ideas. So this time frame, during this time frame in history, there was a lot of pushback by our ancestors. I'm very proud of them. They kept to the Constitution, and they did not wish to turn our country into a socialistic society. It is my personal opinion that our government retaliated not only through the people, but through symbology. 1916, 3 years after the Federal Reserve and the push for socialism, we came out with the liberties. 1916, walking liberty. 1916, standing liberty. 1916, Mercury, which is not really the Mercury. It's actually the winged liberty. The walking liberty is walking into the east for a new day of freedom and liberty. The standing liberty is standing for our freedoms and our liberty. And the winged liberty was given wings on her hat, not to emulate the Greek god Mercury, but to represent freedom of thought. For if you can control freedom of thought, you can control freedom of speech. Sound like the narratives that they're trying to push during current day? I think so. Does it sound like history's repeating itself? I think so. But there was such a push to get us away from all this, so it would be easier as the years roll on. And I'm afraid that our younger people have fallen for it because of the indoctrination that they've gone through. Now, enough about me going on about that. I still want to get on with the I still want to get on with teaching all of you about the coins of our past leading up to our present. The 40%, the Eisenhower. The 40%, the Eisenhower, was minted between 1971 and 1978, but not all Eisenhowers are silver. Most of them are clad. The only ones that are silver are minted from San Francisco. And you can tell because when you turn them on their side, let me use this Muhammad Ali coin round as, actually it's a coin, as an example. When you have a high concentration of silver, you do not see the brown look of copper on the sides. That also happened with the 40% coins. The 40% half dollars. John F. Kennedy, between 1965 and 1971. Between 1965 and 1971. Incidentally, there are 40% quarters, but they were only minted in 1976 and usually in proof sets or bicentennial sets, the year of our nation's 200th birthday. I remember that time very well. Didn't understand coins. We were a struggling nation, but we were proud. Proud of what we were able to do, proud of buying American. Yes, we had other troubles, but we took care of ourselves. We took care of our families. The 35%, yes, I include that in there. It is a coin made of silver and kept with our Constitution. Ergo, I see the 40% and the 35% as constitutional, just as much as I see the 90% dollars, half dollars, quarters, and dimes. A little side note, the dollars, the Morgan and Peace dollar, have a little more silver than what is in 2 half dollars, 4 quarters, or 10 dimes. So it's not really quite fungible, but that's what we had back then. 35%, the Jefferson War nickel. Type 1 was the typical nickel. Type 2 of 1942 was the silver. And they had to try a couple times for this coin because their first attempt, the coin was too big to fit in the vending machines. And these continued until 1945 when they no longer needed nickel for the war effort. But we're not done yet. As the old commercial would say, but wait, there's more. The proofs, made in current day time, well, maybe not so current day as now, but a lot more recently than 1964. 90% half dollars, quarters, and dimes. They equal the total weight of the old coins. But interestingly enough, they haven't had the wear and tear, so they have the 100% of the total weight, what the 90% used to have before they were worn down. So that's my approach on junk silver. Not all junk silver is constitutional because these ones weren't actually in true circulation. The 40% quarters were not intended for circulation. Many of the Eisenhowers were put into kits with the other two. Sometimes they were by themselves. But I see it as this is all constitutional because they have been put into the public for transactions. And some of the 40%ers were broken out of the sets in order to be put into circulation. So, do I believe that constitutional silver or proofs or junk silver is worth stacking? Yes. And I came into stacking in 2021. So the prices were a little lower, but not as low as what other people have been able to buy them for. However, I still see the need for bartering on smaller denominations is very important. I also see that our country of citizens who do not understand gold and silver will recognize these coins before they recognize this, or before they recognize any other sovereign coins. By the way, yes, I did find my Chucky. Chucky was hiding, and Mama scolded him. But anyway, and I think that they'll find those more acceptable than things that have been bought for collectability's sake or novelty's sake. And they probably will have trouble accepting coins that have been colorized and not decolorized, but I'm not going to decolorize that. I believe constitutional silver is highly important. So, in light of that, I would like to show you what I have thus far in my junk silver stack. And here you go. Commemorative silver dollars made of the same substance as the Morgan and the piece. However, they do hold more weight of silver in them. I also collect badly cared for silver. Most of these are highly religious. They're holy, get it? But a lot of people use them as objects on necklaces. That you can get them for less money, and only a little bit of the silver is gone. This is my guardhouse box of 90% silver. As you can see, it's a little over 50% full. This is my guardhouse box on 90% half dollars. It is full, and I've had extras so that they're over there. I have some Barbers, some Walkers, some Benjis, and there's a Kennedy out of the tube. Side note, I always put tape over the top with a clue what it contains, so that when I die, wifey will know what it is. 90% John F. Kennedy half dollars, and so forth and so on. Same with same with all of them, you'll see. This is my guardhouse box of quarters. Also, Barber, Standing Liberty, Washington's, and proof. Notice that the Barber has been slickened down from use. That's the side effects of not having a good rim. This is my first of two guardhouse boxes for dimes. This one is completely full. However, I made a mistake early on and kept with the mistake because I don't like to change. And these are actually penny tubes. Instead of holding 50 dimes, they hold 60. Little side note, I also label the sides for the same reason I label the top, so that wifey will know what they are if she ever has to use them if I die. I'm currently working on a second box of dimes. Why a second box? Very simply, I think we're going to need the dimes more for small purchases. Which then brings me to my reason for war nickels. I do stack war nickels, not as aggressively as you can see, but it's my intention to also fill this guardhouse box. War nickels always look more dirty unless they've been cleaned or they've been kept in good condition. Usually those cost a lot more money and more for collecting than for stacking. But being that they're 35%, it's my belief that when people are suffering and don't have enough silver and they want to buy small things, the dimes will be worth more and you won't be able to get money back. Therefore, the reason for the 35% war nickels. It's also the reason why I believe in stacking 40%. This is my guardhouse box for Eisenhower's, and as you can tell, I'm approaching 50% full. They're not as abundant as the other coins, but I think they're worth it. And as I said, being that they're 40% less silver, you can use those for smaller purchases. This is my guardhouse box of 40% half dollars, all of which are JFK. And you can use those for smaller purchases also. And as I said before, the 40% quarter is only 1976 to 1996 labeled, but it was minted in 1976 for bicentennial reasons only. However, it does have 50% silver that the John F. Kennedy half dollar has, so therefore I think it is still worth holding on to when you can get them, for the same reason that I am getting the second dime box filled, the 35% war nickels, the 40% Eisenhower's. By the way, I love Eisenhower. He was a great president. The 40% and the 40% John F. Kennedy's. So I hope that you enjoyed the little tour through my constitutional or junk silver and why I feel that all of this is important for bartering. And for those of you who are new to stacking, please understand that once again, I am not bragging. This is a time unlike any other. We need to protect our families. And I believe that people will be more willing to accept junk silver a whole lot sooner than silver eagles. They'll accept this sooner or later, but they'll need an educational period, and they'll accept that a whole lot better than accepting Britannias or Maple Leafs. And they'll accept that a whole lot sooner than accepting silver rounds, whether they're buffaloes or collector's items, all of which can be used, I believe, in barter for the future. But I did start off with one Ziploc baggie Eventually got to 2 Ziploc baggies. And then eventually got to 3 Ziploc baggies. And by that time, I knew I needed a better way to categorize and keep my silver and my gold that was easy to find, easy to identify. You didn't have to waste time digging through boxes to find what you wanted. So I hope you like this video. Please keep stacking. Please keep providing for your family. Thank you again. Tiger Stacker out.